Imagine the immense pressures that powerful figures in U.S. politics face daily and what keeps them from breaking down. In Faith and Future, Kash Patel and Karoline Leavitt, two prominent figures of the Trump 2.0 administration, reveal for the first time the journey of faith that quietly sustained them amid the storm of power. From silent prayers in an empty room late at night to moments of choosing forgiveness over retaliation, their story not only touches the heart, but also ignites faith in a generation that has lost hope. At a studio in Washington, D.C., warm golden light bathes the space. The audience fills the seats, the air thick with anticipation before the live broadcast of Faith and Future. Cameras glide gently over the rows of spectators, capturing eager eyes and hushed murmurs fading to make way for something momentous about to unfold. Kash Patel, in a deep blue suit, steps onto the stage with a calm yet resolute demeanor. He shakes hands with Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history, as she delicately adjusts the microphone on her elegant pearl-colored dress. "Great to see you again, Kash." Karoline smiles, her voice warm as if they were old comrades reuniting after a battle. "Ready to share something truly profound?" Kash chuckles softly, replying, "You've got me curious now, Karoline." Both take their seats on leather chairs. Leavitt leans in, whispering, "Today is not about politics. It's about something more meaningful." "Right?" Patel nods, his eyes gleaming. "Exactly." The floor director signals a countdown. The red camera light flares on and the show begins. The host, Emily Carter, steps forward, her voice radiant. "Welcome to Faith and Future. Tonight we have a special conversation between two colleagues from the Trump 2.0 administration, Kash Patel, national security expert, and Karoline Leavitt, the powerful voice of the White House. They'll share about faith, a rare topic in politics, and how it has shaped their journeys." Emily exits the stage, leaving the spotlight on Patel and Leavitt. The studio lights soften, focusing on the two leather chairs where Kash Patel and Karoline Leavitt sit facing each other. The audience falls, silent, sensing the weight of the moment as the program officially begins. Leavitt, with sharp yet warm eyes, leans slightly toward Patel, her voice clear and confident. "Kash, we've worked together in the White House, facing unimaginable pressure every day. You've always shown steadiness in your role. But I want to ask, what has faith meant to you in that journey? What guided you to those spiritual moments even while standing in the whirlwind of politics?" Patel takes a deep breath, his hands resting lightly on his knees, his gaze sweeping the audience before returning to Leavitt. "Karoline, honestly, talking about faith in politics isn't easy. Everything we say can be twisted or used against us. I used to think silence was the safest choice, but lately I've realized some things are too important to keep quiet, even if there's risk." His voice is low but radiates sincerity, stirring a quiet ripple among the audience. Leavitt smiles, her eyes friendly as if chatting with a familiar colleague. "I get it, Kash. Politics is unforgiving, and faith is sometimes seen as a weakness. What made you decide to open up more?" she asks, her tone warm and inviting, encouraging Patel to share further. Patel leans back, his hand lightly tapping the chair, his eyes pensive. "One night, after a long day facing all sorts of attacks, the intelligence controversies, accusations, I don't want to rehash, I came home and sat in my study feeling drained. Not from the work, but from this sense of emptiness. I'd gone far in my career, but something was still missing. Out of nowhere, I reached for an old Bible on the shelf, a gift from my mother I'd never opened." The audience listens intently, some leaning forward, drawn into the story. Leavitt nods, her voice gentle. "And what did you find in it?" Kash Patel smiles, his eyes lighting up as if reliving the moment. "I flipped randomly to the Gospel of John, and the story of the Samaritan woman struck me. Jesus crossed every boundary, race, gender, prejudice, to talk to a woman society had cast aside. He didn't condemn her, but opened a path to truth. In the White House, we often divide us versus them, allies versus enemies. But Jesus erased those lines, and that made me rethink things." Leavitt nods, her eyes reflecting understanding. "That story really hits home, Kash. Working under this roof, I feel the relentless pressure here. For me, my Catholic faith has always been an anchor, especially when facing media storms. But what about you in the high-stakes world of national security? Did those teachings ever create an inner struggle for you? Kash Patel nods, his gaze sharp but sincere, locking eyes with Karoline Leavitt. Karoline, the hardest part is living by the teaching to love your enemies. In my work, opponents don't just disagree, they sometimes want to destroy you, your career, and everything you believe in. I used to think forgiveness was weakness. But reading the Bible, I saw Jesus talk about a different kind of strength, choosing to live kindly even when the world tells you to strike back. His voice is low, compelling, sending a shiver through the audience. Leavitt smiles, her eyes empathetic. I get it, Kash. At the White House, I face criticism daily, and it's hard not to hold a grudge. When you mention love your enemies, I think of a night during the campaign after a day of media attacks. I prayed, and the relief of letting go of bitterness was incredible. Have you experienced that? She asks, her voice warm and genuine. Patel pauses, his eyes drifting to a memory. I tried, Karoline. Once, after a smear article, I sat in my office ready to fire back, but instead, I prayed. Not just for myself, but for the people who wrote it. At first, it felt awkward, like I was kidding myself. But then, a sense of freedom washed over me, like shedding a weight. Forgiving isn't about letting them win. It's about not being trapped by anger. Leavitt nods, her eyes glistening with emotion. That's a powerful perspective, Kash. Working with you, I know how intense the pressure here is, but you're showing how faith can change how we face it. She turns to the audience, her voice vibrant. We often think faith is private, but Kash shows it can transform how we work, right in the heart of political battle lines. Patel smiles, his voice warm and weighted with experience. Exactly. Jesus' teachings aren't just theory. They challenge us to act, to see others with compassion, to respond with kindness. In politics, that's almost a revolution. Thunderous. Emotional applause erupts. Behind the cameras, the production crew quietly nods, realizing this conversation has transcended a typical TV show. Karoline Leavitt leans toward Kash Patel, her smile warm, eyes sparkling with sincerity. Kash, you mentioned the night you opened the Bible amid work pressures. What in those pages truly made you, someone used to the toughness of national security, and White House politics, pause and reflect on Jesus' words? Her voice is intimate, like talking to a close colleague. Patel grows pensive, his gaze dropping to his hands as if searching for words to express a private memory. Karoline, I'll tell you something I've never shared with anyone. One night after a long day at the White House, my mind was heavy, not from the work, I'm used to pressure, but from bigger questions. I faced criticism from the media to internal circles over intelligence decisions. That night I asked myself, what am I doing this for? What's the meaning of it? Leavitt nods, her eyes empathetic. Working here, it's easy to get caught in the grind, but moments like that make you reflect. What happened next? Her voice is gentle, coaxing Patel deeper. Patel smiles, his eyes lighting up as if reliving the moment. I was in my home office, the light dim, and I saw that old Bible on the shelf, a gift from my mother I'd never opened. That night, I flipped to the Gospel of Matthew, reading the Sermon on the Mount. Words like, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," or "Love your enemies," stunned me. They were the total opposite of our political world, where power and winning are everything. The audience stirs, some nodding, drawn into the story. Leavitt presses on, her voice soft but curious. And how did those words affect you? Working with you, I know how strong you are under pressure. How did those teachings become part of your life? Patel shrugs, his voice carrying a hint of self-deprecation. At first I thought they were too idealistic, unrealistic. Love your enemies in the White House? That sounds like a joke. But then, turn the other cheek stopped me. I remembered times I wanted to hit back, to prove I was right against the media or opponents. Jesus talked about letting go of resentment, living differently. I wondered, if I tried it, would things change? Karoline Leavitt leans in, her voice gentle, eyes friendly like she's chatting with a trusted colleague. Kash, have you tried living by those teachings? I mean, in this work environment, that must be no small step. Kash Patel nods, his eyes gleaming with determination. Not the toughness of a security official, but the conviction of someone exploring something profound. I tried, Karoline, and it started with a very personal moment. One night after reading a smear article full of lies, deliberately twisting the truth, I felt anger flare up. Instead of picking up the phone to call the comms team or drafting a rebuttal, I did something I'd never done. I prayed. In my dark study, I whispered to Jesus, "If you're there, help me put out this anger. Show me how to live differently." The audience sits silently, some bowing their heads as if resonating with Patel's inner struggle. Leavitt, her eyes shining, presses on. "And how did you feel, Kash? Did praying change anything?" Patel takes a breath, his voice low, almost a whisper. No miracles or flashes of light, but I felt an odd relief, like shedding a burden. For the first time, I realized I didn't need to win every battle or cling to resentment to prove myself. Forgiveness, it turns out, sets me free, not them. Leavitt smiles, her hand lightly gripping the chair as if holding back emotion. "Kash, that story means so much. Working with you, I know the pressure here, and that feeling of being trapped by anger isn't unfamiliar. For me, faith is a refuge, especially during tough campaign days. But after that night, how did you continue your faith journey?" Patel leans back, his gaze lifting as if searching for words. "I started reading the Bible regularly, not as a duty but to find direction. The story of Nicodemus in the Gospel of John haunted me. He sought Jesus at night, craving truth. The idea of being born again, becoming a new person, made me reflect. In the White House, we're easily defined by roles, reputations, but Jesus talks about inner change. I wondered, if I let these words guide me, who would I be?" Karoline Leavitt leans in, her eyes bright, voice lively yet intimate, like chatting with a close colleague. "Kash, that question you just raised is so meaningful. I'm truly impressed that someone like you, always on the front lines of political battles, finds peace in Jesus' teachings. Do you think these values can change how we work in the White House, how we handle daily tasks?" Kash Patel nods, his voice calm but compelling. "I believe so, Karoline. In the White House, especially in national security, we often talk about protecting the country. But through Jesus, I realize protection isn't just about building walls or using strength. It's about creating a place where people are valued for who they are, not their faction or power. I'm trying to learn that, though. I know I'm far from perfect." The audience claps softly, some nodding, feeling the weight of his words. The production team behind the cameras exchanges quiet glances, realizing this conversation is reaching rare depths for television. Leavitt, sensing the atmosphere, continues, her voice brimming with inspiration. "Kash, you talk about inner change. Can you share more about how faith has changed how you view your work, or how you interact with those around you?" Patel smiles, his eyes sparkling as if ignited. "Go ahead, Karoline. I'm ready to keep talking." Leavitt pauses, her fingers lightly brushing the chair as if recalling a memory. "Growing up in New Hampshire in a small town where my family ran an ice cream shop, faith was inseparable from life. My parents taught me to pray before meals, attend Sunday Mass, and find God in simple things. But stepping into the White House, especially during the 2024 campaign, I saw faith not just as a habit. It was the strength to get through tough days when everything seemed against me." Kash Patel nods, his eyes reflecting empathy, as if sharing a familiar moment with Karoline Leavitt. "Karoline, that story really hits me. It reminds me of when I realized faith doesn't solve every problem but gives you a way to face them. Do you often turn to prayer like that, especially in the White House?" "Whirlwind." Leavitt smiles, her eyes shimmering, holding back a touch of emotion. "Almost every day, Kash, especially since becoming press secretary. This job is like walking a tightrope. Everyone expects perfection, but I'm not that. I remember one time, just days after giving birth to my son, I had to dive into a media crisis. Sitting in my office, looking at my son's photo on my phone, I felt overwhelmed. How could I be a good mother and meet work expectations? I prayed, asking God to help me find balance, and I felt reminded, focus on family, truth, and my core values. The audience sits quietly, some wiping their eyes, feeling the sincerity in Leavitt's words. Patel, his voice warm and low, asks, Karoline, you mentioned truth and values. How do you bring those into your role as press secretary, especially when facing the media storms we're both familiar with? Leavitt leans forward, her voice sharp, yet warm. I realize truth isn't just what I say at the podium, but how I live. Kash, politics can pull you into a race to control the narrative. But faith reminds me I'm working for something bigger, not just the administration. When media chaos hits, like some recent stories, I try to stay calm, pray for clarity, and speak what's honest, even if not everyone wants to hear it. Patel looks at Leavitt, his eyes gleaming with respect. That's real courage, Karoline. I think we both see that no matter how harsh the White House gets, faith is always a steady anchor. Karoline Leavitt smiles, her hand lightly tightening as if holding back a wave of emotion. Kash, hearing you talk about praying to let go of anger feels like I'm speaking to myself. Some days in the White House, pressure comes from every angle, but faith reminds me I don't have to carry it alone. It's like a whisper that no matter how loud the media gets, I'm still guided and valued. The production team behind the cameras exchanges stunned glances, realizing this conversation isn't just a show. It's a rare moment where two colleagues reveal deeply held values. Leavitt, sensing the studio's energy, continues, her voice brimming with inspiration. Kash, we've shared personal experiences. But how can values like forgiveness, honesty, and love shape how we work here in a world full of division? Kash Patel taps his chair lightly, his eyes pensive, weighing each word. Karoline, that's something I wrestle with a lot. In national security, every decision is heavy. Protecting the country, facing threats. I used to think strength was control, defeating opponents. But reading the Bible, especially Jesus' teachings, I realize true strength is holding to your values even when the world tells you otherwise. Leavitt nods, her eyes reflecting empathy. I get it, Kash, but how specifically, with recent media controversies about your work, how do you apply those values? Patel smiles, his eyes briefly self-mocking. Take an example. Once, I was attacked over an old decision, and my instinct was to hit back. But then I remembered Corinthians. Love does not seek revenge. I asked myself, if I choose forgiveness over retaliation, am I weaker? Turns out no. Forgiveness is choosing Jesus' path, keeping dignity without dragging others down. The audience stirs, some murmuring agreement, as if Patel's words touched their own experiences. Karoline Leavitt, her voice warm and approachable, continues, Kash, your perspective is truly striking. Working in the White House, I face tough press questions, sometimes personal attacks. I try to pray for calm, but it's not always easy. Do you ever feel a conflict between living by faith and the pressure to win in politics? Patel takes a breath, his gaze sweeping the audience before returning to Leavitt, full of sincerity. Almost every day, Karoline. Here, people expect you to play the game, attack, control, sometimes twist words to save face. But reading James, the line the tongue is a fire, hit me hard. It reminds me that words, whether in private meetings or public, can build or destroy. I try to choose my words carefully, not letting anger or ego take over. Though, honestly, I still stumble often. Leavitt smiles, her eyes shining with empathy. Me too, Kash. As press secretary, I weigh every word, but pressure can push you into defense mode. Once, after a tense press briefing, I went to my office, prayed not to be swept by bitterness. I remembered Philippians, the part about finding joy in all circumstances. It helped me focus on something bigger, not just defending the administration's story, but serving with truth. Patel nods, his eyes full of respect. Exactly, Karoline. And the great thing is, when we live by these values, it doesn't just change us, it affects others. I recall a tense security policy meeting where I chose to listen instead of argue, inspired by Jesus' teaching on humility. The result? We found common ground, which I didn't expect. It made me wonder, if we bring these values into the White House, could we change how things work? Leavitt leans forward, her voice growing more animated. That's a big idea, Kash. But how do we make it happen? Politics often revolves around power and winning. How do forgiveness and humility find a place in this environment? Kash Patel grows pensive, his gaze seeming to reach a distant horizon. I think it starts with small things, Karoline. In White House work, I try to see each person, colleague or opponent, as a human, not just an obstacle. I remember the story of Zacchaeus in the Bible, the tax collector shunned by society. Jesus didn't condemn him, but invited him down from the sycamore tree to share a meal. That changed Zacchaeus. I wonder, if I treat those who disagree with me kindly, could it open dialogue instead of conflict? Karoline Leavitt nods, her eyes bright, voice lively. I get what you mean, Kash. As press secretary, I try to listen even when the press asks tough questions. Once a reporter grilled me about an administration controversy. Instead of getting angry, I answered sincerely based on the truth. Afterward, he emailed to thank me for how I handled it. Not a huge win, but that moment showed me my faith has value. Patel smiles, his voice gentle. Those moments matter, Karoline. They remind us faith isn't just personal. It's how we impact others. In the White House, where everything gets amplified, living with honesty, humility, and forgiveness can build trust, not just within the team, but with the public. Leavitt, sensing the studio's energy, continues, her voice brimming with inspiration. Kash, you talk about trust. But in politics, where faith is sometimes seen as weakness, how do we stay steadfast? Patel leans in, his eyes gleaming with resolve. That's the big challenge, Karoline. But I believe faith doesn't make us weak. It gives us strength to live rightly, no matter how the world defines us. The audience sits captivated, absorbed by the discussion of faith and politics. Leavitt, her eyes shining, takes a breath, her voice warm and approachable. Kash, you say faith helps us live rightly, but was there a private moment when you felt faith truly changed you, not just as a White House official? Kash Patel pauses, his gaze distant as if revisiting a guarded memory. He clasps his hands, his voice low and sincere, plunging the faith and future studio into silence. Karoline, I'll tell you something I've never shared. One night, after a long day of attacks, not just from the media, but from people I once considered allies, I came home and sat in my study. I felt alone, like everything I'd built was crumbling. I opened the Bible, turned to Romans, and read, "All things work together for good for those who love God." That stopped me. I knelt on the cold floor and, for the first time, prayed earnestly, not for victory but for guidance, to understand the meaning of my work. The audience is silent, some bowing their heads, drawn into Patel's raw honesty. Karoline Leavitt, her eyes glistening, lightly touches her lips as if holding back emotion. "Kash," she says, voice trembling. "That's a powerful moment. After praying, how did you feel?" Patel smiles, a subtle but profound smile. "Hard to describe, Karoline. No light or voice from heaven, but I felt a peace, like a burden lifted. I started seeing my national security work not just as a job, but as a way to serve, to do good, like Jesus did for the outcast." Leavitt wipes a tear, her smile both shy and sincere. "Kash, I didn't mean to get emotional like this," she says, voice catching. "But hearing you talk about the meaning of work, I think of a night in the White House, right after my son was born. After a brutal press briefing, I sat looking at family photos, feeling I wasn't enough, not a good enough mother or press secretary. I prayed, asking God for strength to keep going, to not be swept up in criticism. And like you, I felt a peace, as if God said, 'You don't need to be perfect. Just try.'" Kash Patel nods. "Karoline, your story really hits me. We both have moments where we feel we're not enough, but faith pulls us back, doesn't it?" Leavitt's voice steadies, though her eyes still shimmer with emotion. "It does, Kash. Hearing you share, I'm moved because faith isn't just a refuge. It's a call to action. You talk about service, and I think about my work in the White House, not just delivering messages but bringing hope and truth, even when the world is full of doubt and attacks. The audience claps softly, some wiping their eyes, captivated by the sincerity of the moment. A woman in the front row nods gently as if finding comfort in Leavitt's words. Patel, his voice warm and low, continues, "You're right, Karoline. Faith isn't just something we hold in our hearts. It shapes how we face everything. I started seeing colleagues, even those who oppose me, as people struggling, searching for meaning. That's what Jesus taught me, to look at the heart, not just the actions." Leavitt smiles, her voice lively despite lingering emotion. "That's what moves me, Kash. You remind me that whether at the podium or working in the administration, we're called to love, to serve." Once, after a day of being pounded by the press, I prayed and realized I didn't need to win every argument. Just be honest, do what's right. That's how faith changes me. Patel, his eyes full of understanding, says, "Exactly, Karoline. Faith doesn't promise everything will be easy, but it gives us a foundation to stand firm, to keep going no matter the storm." Leavitt wipes her eyes lightly, smiling at Patel, her voice brimming with inspiration. "Kash, today we've touched on something truly special," she says warmly, as if wanting to hold on to this moment. Kash Patel's eyes are gentle yet resolute. "I feel it too, Karoline. Some things we usually keep private, but sharing them creates a real connection." He turns to the audience as if speaking to each person. "I hope what we've shared today sparks something, even just a new perspective." The audience erupts in enthusiastic applause, some standing to show their appreciation. An older woman in the front row, clutching her handkerchief, nods as if Patel and Leavitt's words stirred personal memories. A technician whispers to a colleague, "Never seen a show like this. They're speaking straight from the heart." Leavitt, beaming, says, "Kash, I think both the audience here and viewers at home can feel your sincerity. I glanced at social media during the show. People are moved." She pauses, her voice softening. "Someone wrote, they didn't expect someone like you working in the White House to be so open about faith. What do you think?" Patel shrugs, his gesture simple but genuine. "I don't see myself as special, Karoline. I'm just someone trying to find meaning like everyone here. If my words touch even one person, that's enough." His words are simple, yet weighty. Outside the studio, the conversation spreads across social media. Posts emerge on X, reflecting varied perspectives. One user writes, "Kash Patel made me see him differently. Talking faith in politics like this, that's bold." A conservative account praises, "Leavitt and Patel show faith can change politics. This is what we need." But skepticism appears too. Is Patel talking about Jesus to win favor or for real? Not sure. The production team gets word from editors. Major news outlets have taken notice. Fox News posts, Patel and Leavitt bring faith to national airwaves, praising their candor, calling it a rare moment in politics. Conversely, The Atlantic is cautious, suggesting the conversation might be a strategy to bolster the Trump 2.0 administration's image. Still, both agree the show has sparked a wave of discussion, from conservatives to skeptics. Karoline Leavitt, sensing the moment's impact, turns to Kash Patel, her eyes shining. "Kash, I think today we didn't just talk. What we shared could spark something bigger. In the White House, in society, don't you think?" Patel's eyes gleam with resolve. "I hope so, Karoline. Faith, when lived authentically, can be a bridge, not to force others to think like us, but to remind everyone we all crave something deeper. Meaning, purpose, connection." Leavitt smiles brightly. "Kash, we've touched many hearts. How do we take these values out there, create real change?" Patel, his eyes alight with conviction, taps his chair lightly, his voice low but powerful. "Karoline, I believe faith isn't just a light in the soul. It's a fire that spreads. In the White House, it's easy to get caught in power struggles. But faith reminds me every decision, every word is a chance to sow hope. In national security, I want to not only protect the country, but build a place where everyone is valued, as Jesus did." Leavitt nods, her smile radiant as if inspired by Patel's words. I understand, Kash. As press secretary, I stand at the podium daily, sometimes feeling like I'm facing the whole world. But faith teaches me I don't need to win every argument. Just be honest, bring a little light. Once, after a tense press briefing, a viewer wrote saying my sincerity made them see politics differently. That's when I realized these values can change how we connect. The audience listens intently, some nodding gently as if finding comfort in the shared words of Kash Patel and Karoline Leavitt. A man in the middle row, in a simple jacket, quietly wipes his eyes as if their confessions touched a hidden part of him. Patel, sensing the studio's atmosphere, continues, his voice gentle but sincere. Karoline, I think today we're reminding people that faith isn't just for keeping inside. It's an invitation to live differently, to treat others kindly, even when they're on the opposing side. If we can do that, even in small ways, I believe, it will create change. Leavitt smiles, her voice lively as if wanting to send a final message. Kash, you're right. In the White House, we face arguments, pressure, division. But if we bring love, truth, and humility to our work, we can build something lasting, not just for today, but for tomorrow. Patel nods, his eyes shining with agreement. That's what I hope for, Karoline. It's not easy. We'll stumble. We'll be criticized. But faith is a compass guiding us right. Even on the darkest days, I want to leave here determined to live true to those values in everything I do. The audience rises, applause roaring like a wave. Not just in praise, but in deep resonance. Some wipe tears, others whisper, wanting to hold on to the moment. Leavitt, beaming, stands and shakes Patel's hand, a firm, meaningful grip. Thank you, Kash, she says, her voice emotional but strong. You've inspired me, and I believe the audience feels it too. Patel smiles, his voice soft but firm. Thank you, Karoline. This is a shared journey, and I'm grateful to walk it with you. The cameras pull back, capturing the two standing side by side, the audience still clapping, some shouting. Words of encouragement. The production team backstage quietly nods, realizing this show has become a call to reflect on faith and responsibility in a turbulent world. What Kash Patel just said about Jesus left Karoline Leavitt in tears, reflecting a profound aspect of life in America today, where political polarization and work pressures often leave people feeling lost, as Patel and Leavitt themselves experienced in the context of the Trump 2.0 administration in 2025. Both figures face intense scrutiny from the media and public, like when Patel was attacked for his role in national security, or Leavitt faced pressure as press secretary. Their personal moments, Patel kneeling in prayer to let go of anger, Leavitt finding peace through the Bible. After a grueling press day, show faith can be an anchor amid society's battle lines. Their conversation, from applying the teaching of love your enemies in politics to living honestly under media pressure, reflects a need for healing in a deeply divided America, grappling with issues like religious freedom, political disputes, and distrust in public institutions. Find a spiritual anchor, like faith, to overcome pressure and hold to personal values. Try, as Patel did, taking a quiet moment to pray or reflect when facing conflict instead of letting anger take over. Draw inspiration from Leavitt to live with honesty and humility, even in competitive environments like workplaces or social media. These small acts, listening, forgiving, staying sincere, can create connection, just as their dialogue inspired the audience, helping build a more unified community amid polarization. Subscribe to the channel to explore more profound stories of faith and hope like the journey of Kash Patel and Karoline Leavitt. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video with more inspiring stories.